Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 4 articles in this episode for you. The first one here is off of Reason.com, and it is entitled, IRS Agents Rented Million-Dollar Townhomes Spend Hundreds of Nights in Hotels Last Year. Taxpayers paid for IRS employees to rent million-dollar townhomes and luxury apartments and covered hundreds of nights at the Ritz-Carlton and other 5-star hotels during 2015. A Senate Finance Committee report on long-term IRS travel released Thursday found that 27 agents who traveled for more than half the year cost taxpayers on average $1.4 million per person. More than half of the travel expenses logged by those employees were for visits to Washington, D.C., and many times the IRS paid for luxury lodgings that the committee called excessive and inappropriate. The description is probably an understatement. Terry Milholland, the former chief technology officer for the IRS, spent 168 days during the fiscal year of 2015 at the Grand Hyatt in Washington, D.C., costing taxpayers nearly $39,000. The hotel, located off H Street, just blocks from the White House, boasts spacious rooms that are cosmopolitan and sleek, featuring infinite luxuries. According to the Senate report, Milholland would routinely commute to Washington on Monday mornings and stay at the Grand Hyatt through Thursday, when he would return to his home in Texas. Even though the Grand Hyatt is located within walking distance of the IRS building and metro station, take a taxi from the hotel to work every morning, running the meter for more than $1,500 during the year. Another employee, who was not identified by name or position, shacked up at the Ritz-Carlton in Pentagon City, Virginia, and left taxpayers with a $43,000 tab. The same employee spent another $29,000 in the same year at other D.C. area hotels, because you can't spend every night at the Ritz-Carlton or else it will start to seem less magical. Not to be outdone by their colleagues, 2 of the employees highlighted in the report skipped luxury hotels and opted instead to stay in luxury apartments. One of them rented a $1.07 million 4-bedroom townhouse in Arlington, Virginia for a year at a rate of more than $4,900 a month. His or her time between Washington, D.C. and Chicago, renting luxury apartments in both cities, with the leases apparently overlapping. The employee's Washington, D.C. apartment cost taxpayers more than $3,100 a month, while the Chicago apartment cost more than $4,600 a month during an 11-month lease. One employee 16 in the committee's report, submitted an incredible 381 days worth of travel reimbursements during 2015, a year that, like most, contained only 365 days. May have filed multiple vouchers covering the same period of time, which would result in number of days in travel status exceeding 365, the report notes. The IRS has routinely failed to take allowable steps to reduce its travel expenditures, said U.S. Senator Orrin Hatch, Republican of Utah, chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, in a statement. The lack of effort by the IRS employees to exercise prudence and economy when utilizing taxpayer funds is concerning, and more importantly, a direct and apparent violation of federal travel regulations. The IRS did not return requests for comment. More than half of all more than half of all travel by the IRS employees brought them to Washington, D.C., with Atlanta and Glasgow, Georgia, and Alabama suburb accounting for the second and third most traveled. Chicago and New York City were other popular destinations. Federal employees traveling to Washington, D.C. for a month can spend as much as $7,000 on lodging alone, the committee found. At that point, one must wonder why the IRS is not buying those frequent visitors their own homes or apartments in the D.C. area rather than filling up hotels. There are virtually no circumstances where an employee would need to spend $7,000 a month on rent, the committee notes. The Treasury's Office of the Inspector General found similar problems with IRS employees abusing travel expenses in 2013 audit, the Senate Finance Committee report notes, but no changes were made to improve the situation. The article that I have for you is off of the WashingtonExaminer.com, and it says, report 20,000 criminal illegals, 84% with felonies and serious misdemeanors. Immigrants with criminal records, the deportation priority of President-elect Trump, total at least 820,000, with most having felony and serious misdemeanor convictions, according to a new report. Some estimates have suggested up to 2 million criminal illegals, but the numbers cited by the Center for Immigration Studies still show an enormous group larger of 4 states: Alaska, North Dakota, Vermont, or Wyoming. The immigration think tank cited numbers from the Urban Institute. That group downplayed the crimes and also questioned deporting any of those who are parents of children who might get left behind. Some estimates say there are only 820,000 undocumented immigrants with criminal records in the country, including 690,000 with serious misdemeanor conviction, said the report. In doubting the severity of the crimes, the Urban Institute added felony under immigration law can mean something different than under criminal law. 690,000 have likely committed relatively minor crimes. For example, theft and simple battery are felonies under immigration law. CIS fellow David North blogged, those cheerful souls. Oh, it's trying to play something. Let me get that shut down.
But your budget doesn't. Introducing
And we're trying to get it shut down. Gee whiz. Holy smoke. These ads that they play on these things, they sneak up on you and they mess up the works. Okay, now let me get back to where I was so rudely interrupted. Okay, we were on the David North blog. It says, those cheerful souls at UI were arguing against the concept that the number might be higher and noted that some of the 820,000 have likely committed relatively minor crimes. They missed the point, I guess, that an illegal alien with a shoplifting record, for example, is an illegal alien who does not belong here in the first place. Then the next article I have for you, get it to pop up here. There we go. This is off of the Jewish Press, and it says, report, whole Arab villages in Judea and Samaria stand empty as residents flee to the U.S. Media reports about the Arab struggle to retrieve the lands of Ammona have been presented by politicians and the media as part of an Arab tradition of loyalty to their land. Indeed, one of the Arab claimants against the Ammona community has been quoted as saying, if your child dies, you can make another one in his place, but land that you sold cannot be replaced. A report in Friday's Maker Rashon suggests reality on the ground in Judea and Samaria reflect a somewhat different set of values. Local Arabs may not be willing to sell their land, but many of them don't live on said land either, preferring instead to immigrate to the U.S. According to reporter Astav Gibor, Route 60, which runs from Aflua on Israel's side of the Green Line through Jenin near Shechem, through Ophrah and outside Ramallah to Jerusalem, and then through Gush Edazon, past Hebron, all the way to Beersheba, features ghost villages on either side of the highway. The Jewish settlers of Ophrah and Ammona have been wondering what has been happening to neighboring Arab villages such as Silwad, 3 miles from the main road and about 8 miles northeast of Ramallah. A visitor happening inside the village can see numerous luxurious villas that are deserted. Gabor, who describes those empty homes as white elephants, met with Sawad, a man in his 79 named Salah, who sat with him over a cup of coffee and revealed that he's been living in Puerto Rico for 52 years. Having left in 1964 before the Israeli liberation of 1967, Salah got his BA in Puerto Rico and now is retired and living off his rental property on the island. His children were born in the U.S. One's a lawyer, another a pharmacist, both Harvard graduates. Sadly, they've only visited the old country once, but both speak Arabic. Todd, age 21, who lives with his parents in Arizona, met Gabor in Dibwan, not far from Sawad. Conclude a 2-year wife search. It's an arranged marriage, and after the wedding, the happy couple will move to America. Hamza has lived in New York and in Arizona, as well as Jordan. Life here in the village is quaint, but it's not for me, he says. Hamza describes himself as a Palestinian, not as an American, and he likes the sense of community in the village his parents had left in their youth. He'd even like to come back someday, maybe, but it's difficult, he says. It's hard to find work, make a living, and earn enough to support the lifestyle I'm used to abroad. He plans to maintain, and this is jumping around here, get the ads to shut down on it. Holy smoke. Okay, now let's go back to where I was. He plans to maintain the same ties to the old places parents have kept, visit every few years. He speaks Arabic, but at school and elsewhere outside the home, it's all English. According to Gabor, 90% of Deir Dublin's residents have an American citizenship. One local resident, Mohammed Mansara, who splits his life between the village and California, estimates the population in the two neighboring villages at 16,000, most of them living abroad. One of the most common methods used to obtain a U.S. visa is marrying an American citizen. In many cases, Arab wives who discover the U.S. lifestyle after having grown up in poverty in Judea and Samaria refuse to go back. My brother married a woman from nearby village of Batin, Mastra relates. There are many Palestinian Americans there too. He brought her to the U.S., arranged for a visa, and the minute she landed there, her eyes opened like she discovered a new world. He would work and she moseyed through the malls and spend money. They had 2 children, and when the elder was 5, my brother wanted his wife and both children to go back to the village so the children learn Arabic and become familiar with Palestinian culture. His wife refused. It ended very badly. They divorced, and today both live in the U.S. separately. My brother's house is sealed, he says, and points at the deserted villa. Arab immigration from Judea and Samaria has been going on for decades. Official Palestinian Authority figures suggest there are 3 million Arabs living there. In reality, the figures are lighter by at least 1 million, according to many experts. Since 1997, Israel no longer operating the census there. The PA count does not abide by international norms, whereby a person who has been absent for a year or more from his country. Demographers Yaakov Filson and Yoram Ettinger suggested the figure of 1.8 million Arabs in Judea and Samaria as opposed to the PA claim of 2.9 million. I have the last one in this episode is off of WND.com, and it says, cops defend shutting down woman's prayer. And we'll get this to scroll up here so that I can read this one to you. I have an article like this. Police officers who are accused of shutting down a woman's prayer in her own home and joking about it have defended their actions to the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit, saying it did not burden her constitutional rights. But that defense claim is gaining little ground with advocates for Mary Ann Sauce, a Lewisburg, Kansas resident who has brought the charges against the officers. WND reported in October when a lower court rejected Sauce's claim and the case moved up to the appeals court. The case is being handled now by lawyers with First Liberty Institute after Mary Ann Sauce, a retired Catholic disability, handled the initial claim on her own. The result was that Judge Julie Robinson granted a motion from the city to dismiss the case and told the woman she wasn't allowed to amend her complaint. However, decided to challenge the recent ruling based on First Amendment issues at stake. And it says, Police State USA, how Orwellian nightmare is becoming our reality, chronicles how America has arrived at the point of being a de facto police state and what led to an out-of-control government that increasingly ignores the Constitution. Order that information on here if you want to click on that and go to that. It says, now the appeals court, the woman's lawyers have rejected the officer's defense. In their briefs, they challenged the government's claim the First Amendment only protects one's ability to choose his or her religion. According to the city of Lewisburg, the act of stopping Miss Sauce's prayer did not burden her free exercise of religion because only conduct that forces her to change her religious practices or causes her to stop praying altogether would violate the Constitution, her attorney said. But they explain the free exercise clause in the First Amendment extends beyond the right to choose one's own religion and includes the right to pray in privacy of one's own home, which is a fundamental right clearly protected by the First Amendment. They say the officers had no legitimate law enforcement justification for the order, and so it burdens her ability to freely exercise her religion in her own home to Miss Sauce's faith and everyday life. Stephanie Taub, associate counselor for First Liberty Institute, said in a prepared statement, the government's argument that the First Amendment only allows an individual to choose a religion but not to fully exercise that faith is a blatant misstatement of the law. The organization said the woman was home late at night when police demanded to come into her apartment. They explained she alleges that they harassed her, saying that the Constitution is just a piece of paper that doesn't work here, and telling her to prepare to go to jail. Terrified, Miss Sauce asked one of the officers if she could pray. After being told she could, she knelt in silent prayer only to have another officer enter the room and order her to stop praying. Only at the end of the encounter did they tell her they were there because of a minor noise complaint that her radio was too loud. The free exercise clause protects the right to do exactly that, freely exercise one's faith. Bradley G. Hubbard, litigation associate at Gibson Dunn, said, it is well established that the First Amendment protects the right to pray in one's own home. We urge the Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit of reverse the district's decision and enable Miss Sauce to have a meaningful day in court as she fights to vindicate her religious liberty rights. A plaintiff need only show that the government substantially burdened sincerely held religious belief, the argument for the woman states. And it's trying to play something here and trying to shut that sucker down. It loves to put these ads up here on these things. My goodness. Okay. If we can get that off of here. And it's taking its dear sweet time about cease and desist. It's cease and desist order on this thing. Gee whiz. Ads going and it just doesn't want to shut them down. There we go. And then everything scrolls out of control. Okay. Well, I thought I had it, and then it jumped again. get it to catch up to me, waiting for the hamster. Poor little hamster. Come on, buddy. He's only got 3 legs and 1 brain cell, so he don't get around very good. Okay, as courts repeatedly have made clear, the Free Exercise Clause not only forbids regulation of religious beliefs, such as, but also protects religiously motivated expression. The court should resoundingly decline the officer's invitation upend decades of established First Amendment jurisprudence by making only the most liberty violations the sine qua non of the substantial burden analysis. The confrontation happened on the night of November 22nd, 2013, when 2 officers approached her door and demanded that she open it. She explained that they did not identify themselves and that she could not see them through inoperable peephole, so she didn't open the door. As a survivor of rape, Sauce never opens the door to anyone she can't identify, First Liberty said. The officers left, but they came back again and demanded to be allowed in. When Sauce came to the door, the officers asked why she didn't answer the door the first time. Miss Sauce saw a pocket constitution given to her by her congressman lying on a nearby table and showed it to the officers, who explained the reason for their appearance. One officer laughed and said, "That's just a piece of paper. That doesn't work here." And we'll try to get this to. Once inside, they harassed her, she said, and at one point telling her to get ready to go to jail. When Sauce asked why, "No yet," First Liberty reported. She was frightened and asked permission to pray, and one officer agreed. Then the other came back into the room and ordered her to stop praying, the complaint explains. They then flipped through the code book to see how they could charge her, finally choosing interference and disorderly conduct. At the end of their visit, they finally explained that they were there because someone thought her radio was too loud. The case is against Lewisburg, its police department, Chief Timothy Bauer, and officers Jason Lindsay and Brent Ball and others, and seeks compensatory and punitive damages. Holy smoke. I never thought I'd have to read an article like that, but hey, this is the life and times we're living in, isn't it? Wow. Okay, I think that's going to be it for today. If I get any breaking news, I'll be back on. So if you like what we're doing, give it a thumbs up, share it around, subscribe, and click that little bell, and check the box so that you get email alerts when I do shows. That way you keep totally up to date on what's going on.